Hello, friends. Max Drew, your friendly neighborhood CPA, coming back to you with some financial advice about how you might be thinking about money if you're a Gen Xer. Now, of course, with Gen X, it's a special time right now where you might be feeling like you're running out of time to save for your retirement and those expenses are coming up. So if you haven't retired yet, but you're thinking about retiring, or you're thinking, hey, maybe I'll work forever because, I don't have enough money for retirement, that could be a thing. But you know what? Most people end up having to retire around the age of 67 because for age-related things, energy, focus, keeping up with technology, all those sorts of reasons, a lot of times people do end up retiring around 67 to 70. They just don't seem like they can keep working anymore. Well, whatever situation you're in today, I want to talk a little bit about the psychology of money and how that could be affecting you in your understanding of your retirement and how much money you're going to need in retirement. Well, I remember back in the day when I was a young kid, back in the 1970s, we used to think, oh, if only I had $1 million. Well, I guess Dr. Evil might say that. Anyway, we used to think, gosh, if I had that much money, it would be like almost impossible to spend that in a lifetime. That would be an incredible amount of money. In fact, you might remember a long time ago, there was a show called The $6 Million Man. And obviously, if you were almost burned to death in a tragic accident, for $6 million, they can build you into a superhuman. So $1 million seemed like a lot of money back then. Well, when we're young, we learned that 2 plus 2 equals 4, and it always stays 2 plus 2 equals 4. We also learned that for 25 cents or 15 cents, we can buy something. Well, have you noticed recently money's changed? Think about the penny. Yes, the outlawed penny. Well, pretty soon we're not even going to be able to use pennies, but back in the day, I remember I could buy a piece of gum with a penny. I put it in the candy machine and turn the knob and you get these little chiclet type of thing out. Well, the days of the penny candy store of the Wild West, you used to be able to get a large piece of candy. In fact, when we talk about candy, let's talk about chocolate and chocolate bars. Believe it or not, from about 1930 to about 1970, the price of chocolate stayed the same. For about 5 cents, you can get a chocolate bar, but what we did see was the size of the chocolate bar and the amount got smaller. That's called shrinkflation. But starting in the 1970s, the price of the chocolate bars went up and up and up. It's especially like the first one I can remember buying, probably about 1976. That cost about 15 cents, as I recall. Well, nowadays, the same chocolate bar bought in a store, typically at 7-Eleven, someplace like that, might run about $3. So if that represents the price of inflation, we could say that the money buys about 20 times less than it did way back in 1976, 50 years later in 2026. So when we think about that, we could think about $1 million divided by 20 equals about $50,000 back in 1976. That's buying power. So do you ever notice like older people sometimes making like a $50 purchase seems like a really big decision, or even $100 purchase? Because back in the day, for maybe $10 or $15, we could fill up our gas tank. Nowadays, it might cost $100 to fill up our gas tank. So emotionally and psychologically, the prices that we grew up with as kids still stick with us. And sometimes we think that money should be worth that. We haven't necessarily updated our database. 2 plus 2 still equals 4, but $5 doesn't necessarily equal a tank full of gas, if you know what I'm saying. So why does that matter? Well, first of all, we might want to think about what kind of life we can have in retirement and how much the money will buy us. Now, if you're still thinking that $1 million, you'd be set for the rest of your life like you were in the 1970s, I don't know. If you had $1 million in the 1970s, you could feel like you could be kind of free with your money. Nowadays, you might feel like if you're careful with your money, you could retire on $1 million. What happens if we don't update our database? 20 years from now, how much buying power is that $1 million going to get you? So today, I just want to talk a little bit about the dangers of not updating your database to understand how much that money's going to be worth. So if you're thinking that you want to learn what it takes to be on track for retirement and have a values-based discussion based on your personal history and also looking at the history of prices and things like that in the United States, feel free to contact me and we could talk about what it might take for you to retire and how we can help make that happen through proper planning. So Max Drew, CPA, with your tip for today: in retirement, psychology counts. How can we count on your retirement to be there when you need it? All right, folks, looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye. Follow, message us, or scan the QR code on the screen to learn more.